Hi, this is Mike from Mike's Unboxing Reviews and How To, and on today's video we'll be taking a look at Deepcool's AS500 Plus, a Noctua DH15 competitor, but for considerably less money. But is it any good? Let's find out. Okay, so in today's video we'll be taking a look at Deepcool's AS500 Plus. This is a video done actually for many reasons. We have reviewed recently the AK series coolers, which you can check out from the links in the video description below. But there's quite a few of you that actually mentioned that the AS500 Plus doesn't get a lot of love. So I figured it'd be a good idea to take it through its paces and see how well it does and see if it's worth the recommendation. So first of all, let's go through, we'll do a look at the packaging, we'll do the unboxing, see what it fits, what it doesn't, go through the specifications. We'll then follow up with some tests against a Ryzen 7 5800X, which is possibly one of the hottest running AMD processors on the market currently. See how well it does against that, talk about the comparisons, and then we'll come back at the very end to see if it's the right cooler for you. So let's start off with the packaging. As you can see, very similar to a lot of the current Deepcool products on the market at the moment. Really nice packaging, fully biodegradable, all that kind of stuff. Lots of cardboard and very few waste materials. Shows you what the cooler is like on the front. On the back of the box, it goes through and gives you a detailed breakdown of the specifications. One thing that you may want to look at, first of all, with this, if you are considering this for your new build, is actually if you have the right size case for it. Now, this cooler is slightly larger than some, measuring in at 164mm tall. A lot of cases on the market these days do top out around about the 160 to 165mm section, so do bear that in mind. My case that I actually use my daily driver, my MSI 100R, actually tops out at 160mm, so that makes testing a little bit difficult, but we will get around it with some gaffer tape, no doubt. But yeah, do check the sizes and documentation of your case. This has got two 140mm fans on it, so obviously it is going to stand up a little bit taller than some of its 120mm counterparts. So when we open up the packaging itself, we get the cooler itself, which is actually packed fantastically well in some really secure styrofoam. That is pretty much the only thing which can't be really recycled, but again, most people probably keep those kinds of things should you wish to sell the cooler on at a later date or just to keep the boxes, like I know a lot of us techies do. As you can see, it's a really nice single tower design with a dual fan setup. So you've got two 140mm fans on here, rotational speeds of anywhere between 300 and 1500 RPM. Full stats will be in the video description, and also I'll put them on the screen for you now. It's actually quite a slightly unusual design on the fans themselves. There are some actual cutouts on the blades as well, which no doubt are there to aid airflow and direct it and also keep it considerably more quiet. This is actually one of the quieter CPU coolers on the market, so if you are looking for similar to water cooling levels of actual cooling capacity, but you do want to keep things nice and quiet and obviously quite simple, I think this is something well worth looking at. As you can see from the sides there, the fans are held on with the clip mechanism, and because it's a dual fan setup, if you wanted to, you could just use a single fan if you don't feel the second fan is absolutely necessary and you want to get extra clearance for maybe VRMs, that kind of thing. When it comes to RAM clearance, you should be absolutely fine. Because of the nature of the design, it is a very slimline tower, measuring in at just 48mm wide, so RAM clearance is going to be no problems whatsoever, even if you are choosing to populate all four slots on your motherboard. Talking of motherboards, it is supported with pretty much everything straight out of the gate. So this supports LGA 1700, LGA 1200 and older Intel sockets. Also supports AM3, AM4, and because AM4 is going to be exactly the same as AM5, at least from what we've heard already, then this is going to be future-proof for the latest AM4 sockets. That is if the TDP ratings stand up to it. This has a rating from Deepcool themselves of the TDP of 220 watts. Pretty much TDP ratings these days are something to be taken with a severe pinch of salt, but certainly it definitely does give you some idea about the performance in relation to some of Deepcool's other products. So we'll take a closer look at the cooler and do a little bit of a strip down on that shortly, but let's go through the accessories box and see what we get in here. So it's actually a pretty decent setup, as is with most Deepcool products these days. So you get a installation guide which goes through in very kind of IKEA-esque instructions, so very easy to follow. You can get an idea of the different sockets. It's split up into Intel and AMD installations. For installation purposes across the various formats, so if you're using a Intel setup, they include a nice metal backplate for the Intel sockets. So again, that's LGA 1200, 1700 and the older 115X range. With the Intel setup, you do use these included brackets and also thumb screws. All of it is nicely bagged up individually, so you know which socket is which. On the AMD side of things, there's just two brackets, 4 mounting screws, and 4 top screws. That is using the standard AM4 or potentially AM5 backplate. To mount all of these finally, there are 4 thumb screws, which is the kind of thing we're used to seeing, so it's nice to see that they've just used one set across the whole range. When it comes to connectivity, because there are 2 fans on there, they do include in the packaging a splitter, so if you don't have 2 CPU fan headers on your board, you can simply plug 2 into there. So there's 2 female sections there, which lead into a single 4-pin PWM plug. On the addressable RGB side of things, obviously we do have a little bit of addressable RGB on there. If for some reason you've got a motherboard which doesn't support A-RGB in the 3-pin 5-volt setup, they do include a separate SATA controller which you can use. So SATA power, and there is a manual control there, so you can set your particular lighting style, which is very nice and handy to have. And when it comes to the rest of it, to connect up to motherboards, they do provide a single cable, which has got their 3-pin connection on one side, and on the other end you've got the options for ASUS, MSI and ASRock, and there's also a gigabyte plug included as well. Also included is a syringe of Deepcool thermal compound. Obviously you can use the thermal compound of your choice, but it's nice that there's a decent sized syringe included. So let's take a closer look at the cooler itself. So as you can see, really nice looking unit, very compact, very heavy. I was surprised actually how heavy it is, considering it is only a single tower. There's a lot of weight to this, and yeah, it is pretty bulky. Like I said before, do bear in mind the height, so the fans do actually stick up slightly proud of the top section. So the cooler itself actually comes in at 160mm, which would have been fine for pretty much all cases on the market, especially in the ATX and micro ATX form factors. But with the fans sticking up a little bit further over the top of that, that does give you about an extra 3 or 4mm, so do bear that in mind. I'm going to do my very best to try and get that to go a little bit lower. I'm pretty sure that actually when it's installed with those screws actually fastened right down, that might just give us a few more millimeters to actually allow this to fit in a 160mm capacity case, but we'll find out as we go through later. Taking the fans off is a relatively simple affair, so there are clips on the side which you can just pull off, and then you can remove the fan. The fan itself, like I said, 140mm, nice Deepcool fan, and it is the TF140S model. No RGB on the fans themselves, which actually for me is a bit of a blessing. It just means there's less wiring. All you have is a single 4-pin PWM connection. When it comes to the rear fan, although it does come installed from the factory, ready to go, you will need to put some rubber pads on there. So they do include 4 rubber pads, and these just stick onto where normally you'd put in screws, and that brings the fan out slightly away from the actual tower itself. If you don't put those on there, you will find that when the blades spin, they do actually scratch against the cable and also the fin stack, so do make sure you do that. So looking at the fin stack, we can see here at the back we've got the cable running down for the addressable RGB, which terminates into their own 3-pin connection, which plugs into the rest of the kit which is supplied. There are 2 mounting screws at the bottom for ease of use. This is pretty much the preferred way of doing it these days. A lot of manufacturers do go a little bit overboard with maybe 2 or 4 connections, but yeah, this is a very simple way of doing it. You have got 5 heat pipes on there, 6mm heat pipes, which have all been laid out in a pretty much symmetrical way, so you could mount it either way if you wanted to, but really that is the front and that is the rear. On the top there we've got the addressable RGB section, which obviously if you don't want to use it, you can just disconnect it and it will just be completely blank, which for some people may work out. One of the few coolers actually on the market which has basically really no identifying marks on it. Essentially, if you change the fans, you wouldn't know what manufacturer this comes from. Deepcool have chosen not to put any of their logos on this whatsoever. Moving down to the bottom, so there is a protective cover over the cold plate, which is actually finished pretty well. You can see some machine marks on there, but it is relatively flat and relatively smooth. So I think that's it for looking through what we actually get in the box and the specifications. Let's get it installed and see how well it actually does. So let's take a look at some of the temperature results. So like hinted at earlier, so we're comparing this against the Silentium Fortis 5, which is what was in my PC previously, so it's actually a very good competitor, very similar in most of the specifications. Running with the 5800X, and also ambient temperature in the room 24 degrees Celsius. So obviously the temperature you're just going to see on the screen, just take off 24 degrees C, and that is the mean temperature. So 2 lots of testing, one with 100% fans and the other one with our standard fan curve. Standard fan curve is 40% at 40 degrees, 60% at 60 degrees, and at 70 degrees Celsius or higher, we're looking at 100% fans. So 2 lots of tests, one with a standard fan curve, one with 100% fan curve. So let's take a look at the standard fan curve first of all. So lowest recorded temperature on the Fortis 5, 37 degrees Celsius, against the AS500 Plus, running at 34 degrees Celsius, so 3-degree drop there. When it comes to the top end, under full load with Cinebench R23, the Fortis 5 scored 70 degrees Celsius, and the Deepcool AS500 Plus come in at 69 degrees Celsius. So they both perform pretty much identical, although we did see some slightly lower results at the idle speeds with the AS500 Plus. Now we're going to go over to our 100% fan test. So this is every single fan in the PC, 100%. This is basically full blast, best possible scenario. So with the Silentium Fortis 5, we had a lowest temperature of 33 degrees Celsius, and the highest temperature was 69 degrees Celsius, against the AS500 Plus, where we had 32 degrees Celsius as the lowest recorded temperature and 68 degrees Celsius as the highest recorded temperature. Again, with that, with the Cinebench runs, kind of run-to-run variances, we did actually weirdly see the Fortis 5 at 100% hit a slightly higher score. That was a bit of an anomaly. I don't entirely know why, but there was a little bit of extra headroom, around about 100 points. Again, could have been down to a background process. Essentially, I would say all the scores, there's very fractional differences between them, and in terms of temperatures, there is, to be fair, a very slight advantage with having the AS500 Plus. In either standard fan curve or even the 100%, we are seeing 1 or 2 degrees lower at the high end and a good 3 or 4 at the lower end, so there certainly is a little bit of an improvement there. Essentially, what we're looking at here is a lot of these coolers around this sort of price point, and also of this kind of size and style. Because it's a 140mm tower, obviously you are getting a little bit more extra airflow because of those slightly larger fans. What I do like about this the most, in fact, is it is a single tower cooler. I'm actually really coming around to the idea of single tower coolers, even larger single tower coolers, for many reasons. They do take up less room, obviously, as you can see, even here with the dual fan model, it isn't taking up a great deal of room, and also it's a lot easier to maintain and manage. You've got a lot more clearance around the outside edges, so if you need to get your RAM out, or you need to unplug a power supply cable, that kind of thing, very simple and very easy to do. You can get your hands in there without any real problems. The actual installation method is very, very simple. You've probably seen it from some B-roll I filmed a little bit earlier, but essentially using the AM4 backplate, put on a couple of thumb screws, put your brackets over the top, put the thumb screws over the top of that, attach your cooler, but attach your fans, and that's it, you're off to the races. It's very much a kind of plug-and-play process. And surprisingly, I still can't believe that it physically fitted inside my case, which it still shocks me now, actually. Anyway, there you go. That has been my thoughts and findings on Deepcool's AS500 Plus. I've got to be honest with you, I wasn't expecting a great deal. I wasn't expecting it to be anything out of the ordinary. Performance-wise, it's done basically what it says on the tin. It's done very well. In terms of actually value for money, I think if you can pick this up for somewhere around the sort of £50 mark, yeah, definitely onto a winner. If you can get it less than that, absolute bargain. When you start paying a little bit more for it, there does tend to be a lot more options on the market. And of course, obviously, the big elephant in the room is potentially you could go with a 240mm AIO cooler. More complex, more things to go wrong, but possibly slightly better temperatures. But anyway, that is going to be down to the individual. Personally, I actually do prefer air cooling, nice and easy to maintain. Again, if you want to clean anything, just remove a fan, give it a dust off, and that's pretty much it. But anyway, what I think about it isn't important, what you think about it is. So let us know what you think in the comment section below. Do you like the AS500? Do you like its discrete A-RGB? Is it something that you would put in your PC? And were you surprised about how well it did against the 5800X? I actually was, I've got to be honest with you, because that is one hot sucker. Anyway, I've been Mike, this is Mike's Unboxing Reviews and How To, and hopefully we'll catch you in the very next video. Thanks for watching.